Do you remember being a teenager and bringing grades home, and maybe they weren't necessarily the grades you were hoping for, and you had to show your parents, or maybe a horse show and you walk out of the ring and your trainer's standing there and you're just looking at their face and you know that it wasn't a very good ride? In that moment, what feels better from that person? Does it feel better if they just say, I love you, don't worry, I got it, like, I love you, I love you, I love you, and sort of love bomb you, you're amazing, whatever? Or does it feel better if they say, yeah, that was hard, that was a hard one, I know you could have done better, but you're gonna do better next time, and we have plenty to work on now, and you're gonna be okay? Which of those feels like you are more valued, like you're more respected, like they're actually paying attention to you? Because I know for me, feeling like somebody sees when it's not going well and they see that and they acknowledge it and that they're there with me feels a lot more meaningful than somebody that just loves me no matter what. In my decade of working with horses, something that I have learned about people is that love itself on its own is not enough. Our horses and the people in our lives don't need us just to simply love them, but they need us to actually understand them. And that is what we're talking about today. Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm a whole horsemanship trainer, and I'm on a mission to help you and your horse to develop a better relationship and a deeper bond based on whole horsemanship principles and groundwork, and also to enjoy more of the slog of the day-to-day, because that is where we often end up. Right now we're working on a really fun video series where we're talking about different things that horses have taught me about humans, and this is a really, really fun series for me because I often am pretty reflective about what the horses are teaching me. And this is one that I see really often. So another example of this is, let's say we all know the woman in the barn that is just like lovey-dovey on her horse all the time. He could do no wrong. She just is obsessed with him, very heavy-handed with the cookies and the pets and the loves and the massages. And like, he could literally like turn and take a chomp bite out of her arm and she would be like, oh, he loves me, that was a love kiss, and he was just really trying to connect, and like just pure love for this horse all the time, stars in her eyes, and just does not see any fault in this horse that everyone else can see has some faults. So no amount of love will ever fix that situation or that relationship. I have come to call this the Black Beauty paradox, because this is something that I think horse movies and horse media and books and magazines have all told us for our entire lives, that if we just love a horse enough, it'll fix all of the problems and they'll just like magically turn into this wonderful mount for us. And that is not at all how this works. And I think a lot of us actually know a lot better. But in order to actually fix these problems with our horses and fix our relationships, what we need to do is take a step back and understand what our horse needs and seek first to understand, and then we can layer the love on top of that. So let's do a little bit of that. Let's first think about what motivates a horse. So horses are herd animals, and they're motivated by safety primarily. They are, of course, primarily flight creatures and prey. And so you'll notice when you see a herd of horses out grazing, a lot of them have their heads down on the ground, but they're all facing different directions. That's because while horses can see almost all the way around themselves, they do have a couple of pretty big blind spots. And so by all of the horses facing different directions, they all can kind of see all around them. If one of them alerts to something maybe off in the bushes, you'll notice that a whole bunch of the rest of the horses' heads start to pop up and they all become elevated, whether or not they even necessarily see the same scary thing. They all start to alert as well. So horses are extremely tuned into each other's emotional states for the safety of the herd, which is really, really interesting. They also do have a hierarchy in their herd. However, it's not based on dominance the way that we think of it as humans. It's not about who's the fiercest or the toughest or the strongest. It's not about that. It's about who has built the most trust and respect from their herd mates over time. That's who gets the highest place. And so this is really something that is so, so, so important for horses, is to be a trusty and respectable leader that they can co-regulate with and find safety from. And a lot of times this is where problems arise from our horses. So let's take the biting horse as an example, and I actually have an entire video all about the horse that bites. But for the purposes of this topic, let's talk about a horse that bites. Could be biting for many, many different reasons. They could be biting because they've been spoiled by too many cookies, which is the one we all tend to go to first. They could be biting because they're in pain. They could be guarding themselves. They could be afraid. They could be biting because they're actually testing to see, are you going to step up and be the strong leader that I need you to be? It comes from a place of insecurity. There's all kinds of different reasons why a horse could be biting, and until we know why our horse is biting, no amount of love alone is going to fix that behavior. It might make us more forgiving of them, because if they're biting, we're probably going to continue to get bit for a while. So may make us more forgiving, so the love might be helpful in that instance. But generally, what we really need to do is address the root of the issue and figure out why our horse is biting in the first place. And then from there, then we can come in with a strategy to address the behavior. Another really important thing to know about our horses is that their prefrontal cortex is not as developed as ours. They do have one, so myth that they don't. And if you have seen that thing about the horse's brain being the size of a walnut, that is absolutely not true. Throw that away. That's absolute internet craziness. But they don't have as much of a developed prefrontal cortex as we do. And so what that means is they are not sitting in their stall at night telling them stories about how mean you were today, or why you're not there with them right now, and missing, thinking like you're probably out hanging out with your other friends and like they're left out, and plotting how they're going to make your life miserable tomorrow. Like, they don't do any of that. Same with the biting, right? Your horse isn't sitting there like waiting for their opportunity to strike and like planning their next attack. Like, they are living in the moment. And that doesn't mean that they don't have memory and that they're not like maybe processing the events of the day or anything along those lines, but they're not sitting there telling weaving these grand webs of stories the way that we do as humans. And so that's a really important thing to remember as well when we're thinking about what is causing our horse to do these different behaviors. It's definitely not a lack of love. Yeah, although love helps, it does help. There's never too much love, for sure. Please keep loving your horses, but that is not the problem. And it's also definitely not because they're sitting there plotting against you. That's just not happening. So another really important thing to think about is that they are, like I mentioned, really feeding off of our emotional state, and that they find their safety and security there in our emotional state and in our ability to hold a boundary. So that indicates to your horse that you are a safe person and a safe leader, and that they can trust you when you have a consistent, clear, calm demeanor around them. This can be really, really tricky, especially going into the holidays, which we are right now. And so if that's something that you're struggling with right now, as we're, life is getting more chaotic and we're adding in more social events, and a lot of us really need to refuel with our horses at the barn, but it gets harder and harder to refuel because we are getting busier and busier outside the barn, and a lot of times that stress ends up seeping into our barn time and making us a little less of that calm, dependable person for our horse. So if you're struggling with that, there's a form in the description below, and I highly recommend checking that out, because I am working on a resource that might be really helpful to you. And if you fill that out, I'll let you know when it's ready. But I also want to sort of like flip this a little bit into the human realm, which is, we are going into the holidays, which means you will be sitting at a table, most likely, with somebody who you maybe don't agree with, especially in this really tense political climate we're in right now, etc. So if that's the case, what I would encourage you to do is think about that person similarly to the way you think about your horse, and try to remove your human projection, your own story, remove the things that you think are maybe why they're acting the way that they are, or the stories you're telling yourself about why they act the way that they are. And just for a moment, like, actually come back to what might be their motivation. Where might they be lacking? Where might they be hurt? What might they be looking for? What might they be needing from me? What might they be needing from the world? And while this may not fix anything, at the very least, it might give you more empathy and make these hard moments a little bit more tolerable. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, definitely check out the rest of the videos in this series. And until next time, make sure to hug your horse for me.